Hello, I'm Paul Houston. I'm the author of the book Giving Wings to Children's Dreams, Making Our Schools Worthy of Our Children. I'm a longtime educator. I was a teacher, principal, superintendent in 3 different districts, very distinctly different districts. And I worked for 14 years at the national level, running a national organization for school leaders. I think that the most important thing about my early life, though, was I had teachers who gave me a sense of who I could be and what I might become in ways that I didn't see in myself. And they gave me a chance to see myself and my possibilities in new ways. And that really shaped me as well. I was a superintendent in the early 1980s when the Nation at Risk report came out, and there was something about that time and that report that gave me some pause and made me wonder. Because the criticism that was being leveled at schools at that time, and certainly has been leveled at schools since then, didn't seem quite right to me. It seemed to be off note. It didn't seem to really capture what I was seeing and knew about schools. I had problems with what was going on in the school. I had criticism. It's just not the criticisms that I was hearing about in the national media. I think as a result, we've taken a wrong direction in the way we've changed schools. I say in the book that we've been leaning our ladder against the wrong wall. When you do that, you paint the wrong house. And I think we've been spending a lot of time painting the wrong house in the school reform movement. And I hope this book is an antidote to that as well. What came out of that Nation at Risk and the reports that followed it was what has been called the business model of school reform. Competition, assessment, and accountability. And unfortunately, all those things don't really take into consideration what education really is. First of all, there's this blanket condemnation of schools when the schools in this country are so different and so varied. It's very difficult to tell the true story when you make blanket statements about schools. It's also the fact that poverty plays a role in a lot of our schools, and some of the criticism that's been leveled at our schools is because of the conditions surrounding the schools, the conditions that children bring with them. But even in our middle class schools, sometimes the issues are issues of boredom and other kinds of considerations. I think what's happened is we've forgotten that education is largely organic. It's not mechanical. You can't fix it in the way that the school reform agenda is laid out, because education, everything in education is connected. We've also forgotten that if you depend on competition as your solution, that's fine for the few winners, but there's an awful lot of losers in the process. Education is interconnected. Things are connected to each other, so when you do one thing, something else happens. For example, if you depend on high-stakes testing as your solution to educational concerns, you're going to end up pushing the dropout rate up. If you end up trashing teachers because of concern about their qualities, you're actually hurting the very people who are supposed to be delivering the improved education, which makes for a very difficult situation. So these things don't really work very well. I think the thing that we've forgotten is that the essence of education is motivation. Change is an inside job, and you get change from the inside and not from the outside. So what is the wall we should be leaning on? That's really what I tried to make this book about. One is that if you're dealing with children of poverty and you talk about dreams, the first thing you have to do is get them to believe that they can even dream and that dreams are possible. And then you've got to give them some sort of path to be able to do something about those dreams. In dealing with children from middle-class backgrounds, the challenge is a little bit different because they have their dreams. It's probably very difficult to get them to believe that school has much to do with finding those dreams, because their life outside the school is much more interesting. And so what you have to do is to take into consideration these differences. When you're dealing with poor children, you have to understand they bring strengths with them. They don't come to school unarmed. They bring wonderful, wonderful possibilities. And what do we do in school? When they get there, we spend a lot of time telling them what they don't know and what they can't do, instead of affirming the things that they bring with them. Our middle class kids do well on the tests that we give. They do fine. They make AYP and all the things that we're supposed to be worried about, but they end up being bored and uninterested in learning. And it's just a disconnect for those kids between what they would like to be about and what they actually have to do in school. All these kids, I believe, need a sense of what's possible for them, and that's really what the book's about as well. Kids have to have access to a curriculum that is meaningful to them, and they have to be taught in a way that's engaging for them, and so that they can connect to things that are important in their lives to what they have to learn. And if you can't do that with education, then all the external pressures that we're putting on schools are not going to get us where we need to go. Also, I believe that for America to compete internationally, which is one of the big issues now, we have to rely on our creativity. We cannot have competition with India and China for producing more engineers, because we're always going to lose that race. But what we can do is have more creative engineers. We can have people who apply creativity to what goes on. I was a few years ago visiting a school, and I tell the story in the book of a high school in Olathe, Kansas, where they were doing a tech prep class, and I went in and they were building what they call battle bots, which are robots that fight with each other. And I've never seen kids more excited about what they were doing, because the work they were doing was so meaningful and engaging for them. And I asked one of the kids, I said, "Why are you so excited?" He said, "Well, my other school, they told me I need to learn calculus because it was good for me, but I know why I need to do it because I had to apply it to this work that we're doing here in this classroom." That's the kind of classrooms that I think we could have all across America if we changed the way we do education. This book is in many ways a competing vision for what education reform could be and should be. It's a book that talks about teachers being respected, that kids being motivated by doing work that connects them in meaningful ways to what's interests them and what's on the outside of the school, which knocks down the barriers between what's inside and outside schools. And most importantly, it talks about giving access to kids' dreams, because it really doesn't matter if we have good test scores if they stop dreaming about what they can become. The book uses a lot of humor, I hope. It's hopefully inspirational, and it's not really written in an education way. I wrote a book that I wanted to read, not one that I should read. The book also has a study guide in it, so it will help people working in schools not just to see what is possible, but give them a path to work towards those possibilities by giving school leaders or those who want to work with groups of parents or what have you a way to talk about how we might change from where we are to where we need to go, because it could leverage and change the way we look at education. Thank you.